Hello and welcome to today's special members only webinar. My name is Lauren Cornegay-Dollar and I'm the Adult Programs Coordinator here at the National Museum of the Pacific War. Without further ado, I am going to go ahead and hand the program over to our guest speaker for today, Dave Holland. So we're just going to switch places really quickly.
Hello, I'm Dave Holland. I'm very honored that the museum invited me here today to present and speak to the audience and the members and allow me the opportunity to talk about what I love the most. Well, I won't say that, but Guadalcanal. And any chance I get, I'd love to discuss Guadalcanal. And one of the things about Guadalcanal that I've really been studying quite a bit for a number of years is someone who probably doesn't need much of introduction. He's a very well-known Marine. It's John Basilone, or Sergeant John Basilone, who was awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions on Guadalcanal in October during the Battle of Henderson Field. So today I'd like to present some items, but I'd love to speak about the context or what Basilone did on Guadalcanal to rate this discussion. So I could talk about Basilone all day, but only got a limited amount of minutes, so I'll get straight to it. So John Basilone was in the U.S. Army pre-war. He was born in 1916 in Buffalo, New York. So Basilone served 3 years in the U.S. Army, and he was a machine gunner, or heavy machine gunner, in a water-cooled machine gun. So he served from 36 to 39 in the Philippines, mainly in the 31st Infantry Regiment. So he served his time, he got out, served honorably, and brought his skills as a machine gunner to civilian world, which wasn't much use in those days for a machine gunner. So he was longing for adventure, and he wanted to get back to the Orient, specifically the Pacific, Philippines, or China. So first outfit he could think about doing that was U.S. Marines. Now, I was in the Marines for 8 years, and I'm going to say something here. If you're a Marine, you might want to cover your ears. John Basilone never went to the Marine Corps boot camp. Yes, I can verify that. I have his record book, and Basilone said it not because he's such a great Marine, he was, but because it was common practice. If you were a prior service, especially in the U.S. Army, you would go straight into the Marines. And that's what happened with John Basilone. So he went in the Marines in 1940. He achieved rank quite quickly, and he went to the machine guns. And that was his specialty. So initially, he went to 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. And then when the 7th Marines was formed, he went to the 1st Battalion of the 7th Marines, which is D Company, which is the weapons company. So the war kicked off. Basilone and his unit was fitted out with some of the best NCOs, the best officers, best equipment, because they were thinking they were going to be the first to fight. So they sent them straight to Samoa because the Japanese are rolling in the Southwest Pacific. They were going to garrison Samoa, a very important line between Australia and America. So they first to fight, sent them in, ready to go. So the 7th, if you know your Marine Corps history, was a who's who. You had Chesty Puller, was Basilone's battalion commander. You had H.H. Hannikin, who was already a Medal of Honor, had won the Medal of Honor, or earned the Medal of Honor, for the Banana Wars. He was battalion commander. You had Sims, you had Mitchell Page, and you had Basilone, who were not legends at the time, but soon to be. So they fitted them out with the best talent, thinking they were going to be the first to fight. And guess what? August the 7th, 1942 rolled around. They were left in Samoa, where the rest of the divisions invaded Guadalcanal and landed. So to fast forward, 18 September, the 7th Marines landed. So Major General Vandergrift, division commander, welcomed these guys to a big addition to the division. So they sent the 7th Marines down in the area around Edson's Ridge or Bloody Ridge and to the east and around in the flat jungle swamps. And there they manned bunkers. They dug defensive lines into the thick jungle, nice flat swamps, reinforced coconut log bunkers, put machine guns in there, and they set up a defensive position to guard the strategic area of Henderson Field. So October 24th, 25th came around, 1942. The Japanese had a major assault against Henderson Field. I've got some photos here. What you can see here is a bunker. And this is when I talk about the log encased bunkers. This is what a bunker looks like. You think, was there a bunker there? There's a bunker. And you can see it has sandbags on top and it has coconut logs. It was very well camouflaged. Now, they cut these in the thick jungle. And the Americans only had about 25 to say 40 yards into the barbed wire line, and another 20 yards on the other side. So you can see the fields of fire was very limited. What they did to compensate, they took barbed wire, which was kind of their secret weapon, and put them in 4-foot aprons, barbed wire aprons. And there, they were expecting the Japanese to come out of the jungle and get caught up on the barbed wire line. And then these fixed Marine machine guns could go to work. So this is the trail. Now, this has been a colorized version, but the trail was actually Sector 3 trail. And the Marines had divided defensive areas into sectors. Now, the line to the left from the trail, you'll see another line through the jungle. That's Edson's Ridge or Bloody Ridge. There's some accounts of how Basilone was up on Edson's Ridge or Bloody Ridge, which is not true. He's very near it. There were 328 yards directly east of Edson's Ridge on the eastern spur. Nice flat jungle. You can imagine the Japanese, they're coming out of that thick jungle at night, and they're looking for avenues of approach, easy way to get through the jungle. And it basically channeled or funnelized the Japanese down this trail. And that was a trail that the Marines had to send their outpost in. So it's a very important trail. So Basilone, John Basilone, had 2 machine gun sections. So not to bore you with, break it down to how many men and guns, but roughly he had 14 men and 4 heavy machine guns. So each section was 2 heavy machine guns. So we had 2 sections, but basically half a platoon. So Basilone had 2 bunkers. Those bunkers we showed you earlier, the photo, he used 2 bunkers. So he was in the left-hand bunker with 2 machine guns. 30 yards to his right was 2 other bunkers with 2 other machine guns. Now, this is something that, unless you really study the Basilone Medal of Honor actions, a lot of people don't realize there was a 37 millimeter anti-tank gun, Marine, 50 yards to Basilone's left, once again guarding that Sector 3 trail. So Basilone was actually supported that gun. So they had all their firepower based on that trail. And then on both sides of John Basilone was the rest of his battalion. So at that stage, there were roughly about 700 Marines of the 1st Battalion, 7 Marines. So they're all spread out in that area. So late in the night on the 24th of October, Basilone's in his bunker. He's on the field phone line. That's a line that basically was tapped into the field phone. Their outposts reported that the Japanese were moving in. So he's waiting, they're waiting. They started shooting to the left, some of his guys, and then next thing they knew, Japanese waves started coming down the trail. All right, so Basilone and his 2 guns to the left was holding them off. Then probably about 20 minutes later, a runner from another bunker came over. Remember, they're only 30 yards to the right. He came over, and in Basilone's own words, he said, the other gun's busted, it's been taken out. So what Basilone did, he's grabbed a 1917 water-cooled heavy machine gun with a tripod attached. Now, there's a lot of misinformation and I guess inaccuracies in the John Basilone Medal of Honor action. And one of them, probably one of the most common ones, it depicts him firing the gun from the hip. Well, that didn't occur. Basilone had it on a tripod. So he grabbed 3 other guys, grabbed the machine gun in a tripod because he's been told the other machine gun's been taken out, and then start making their way to the other bunker because, once again, they have to defend that vital southern or Sector 3 trail. So he's making his way there. He says in his own words, they came across 6 to 8 Japanese, and we took care of them. Didn't describe how, but he managed to make it to the other bunker. In the other bunker, there was only 2 Marines left. He said the other ones that were dead and wounded had been taken out. There's only 2 Marines left. So what Basilone did, he set his gun down on the tripod, straight on the ground. So I've got a photo here. I'll show you. It shows John Basilone laying on the ground. Now, this photo, when I first seen it, it was taken in 1944. So John Basilone, after he was awarded the medal, he went on a famous war tour, bonds tour, and this was a photo I think was taken on that tour. And the first time I looked at it, I said, well, he's recreating his Medal of Honor action because in his own words and eyewitness reports, he laid the gun straight on the ground. His tripod was a low-profile tripod that would allow him to get the gun down. And he fired it from the prone position, laying down off a tripod. He said he took his .45 pistol and laid it down on the ground beside him. And you'll see in the photo, it was the pistol it's laid down beside him. So in this press photo, he's recreating his actions. So he laid the gun down. He said he rolled into the bunker to see how bad the guns were. He said one gun was busted in his own words, but the other gun, he said, had a ruptured shell, a stoppage. Then he said he went in and he took his knife and it took him less than a minute and he cleared the stoppage. So he had two guns operational. When he moved over to the bunker, he said there was two Marines left. One guy was named Billy Joe Evans, and one was Crupton. So said both of them were firing their rifles and screaming at the Japanese. Both were wounded, and they were still fighting away. So one of those guys got the Navy Cross, and Evans got the Silver Star. Crupton got the Navy Cross. So they're fighting away, providing fire on both sides for Basilone, including the other three guys who took over. So what Basilone would do, in his own words, he said he would fire a belt of 250 rounds, roll over, load the other machine gun, and fire it. And he would roll them back and forth, alternating through. And the Japanese, instead of coming in all one wave, he said they were coming in small waves, 30, 40, 15, 20 at a time. 1 minute, he said they'd come in 5 minutes. Some would take 10 minutes, and he was fighting them off the whole time. So this is going back and forth. And during the time, a couple of his guys were wounded. They moved out, but he's still fighting it. And there was still Japanese going to the left and right, infiltrating around. And he mentioned, he says, during the course, because he had the .45 on the ground, this one of his men would yell out, "They're behind you." He said, "I looked to be a Japanese behind me, and I would take care of them." And he basically mentions how many rounds he fired during the course. He said he had only one round left in his gun and his pistol. But this went on for about 3 or 4 hours, and then he started running low of ammunition. So this is probably the most amazing thing I found in the Basilone Medal of Honor action. So you can, like I said, you can imagine the Japanese were infiltrating past. And one of the techniques the Marines had to counter this, they'd remain in their holes. They said, let the Japanese get past you, just remain in your holes and stop fighting. In fact, Basilone actually said, I didn't know what the score was. He said, I just kept fighting. We were told people behind him would take care of him. So he has to go get ammunition. And the ammunition point was 150 yards to his left. And I found this ammunition point. And he knew the Japanese were behind him. So the most amazing thing he did, you got to remember, he's got this line of bunkers, right? Barbed wire in front, thousands or hundreds at that stage, Japanese in front of him. He runs in front of his own bunker, down the barbed wire line, in front of all the other Marine bunkers, because remember, he got hundreds of Marines on both sides fighting, and he makes his way back into the American lines. He says he goes back, and he grabs a box of ammunition. Now, I looked and seen what a box of ammunition, of the linked 250 round belt lengths of the machine gun at the time. The box weighed something like 105 pounds, and that's all dead weight. Well, Basilone was reported to be a pretty stout fellow. So if I use Australian language, sorry, I'm part Australian. So yeah, he was a stout guy, very strong. He said when he would move through the clearings, he would drag the gun, and then when he'd get to the jungle, he'd run with the gun. Anyway, he made it back with rounds, and he replenished the guns, and they kept firing. Now, when it almost was daybreak on Guadalcanal, because it's so close to the equator, it gets daylight very quick and dusk very quick. So he knew that normally the Japanese would attack probably the last rush before daylight. So they gathered the guns, getting ready, but the Japanese never attacked. So that was about 6:30, 7 in the morning. About 8 o'clock, his battalion commander, Chesty Puller, famous Marine, walked by, looked at Basilone, looked at all the dead Japanese, and said, "Good work." And that was it. And from Puller, that was praise in itself. He said, "Good work." And he kept moving. Now, at that stage, probably an hour before that, and these guys hardly ever get mentioned in this incident, it was the 164th U.S. Army Regiment. The farm boys that Puller called them. So those farm boys can fight. So always give a shout out to the U.S. Army there. And they were already in, a whole battalion of them. So they were there, and they'd already been integrated in Marine positions. At that stage, the Marines started moving back, 1-7, and moved up on Edson's Ridge, and the Army took over their positions. So that ended 1-7's fight. So Basilone's fight, contrary to what some accounts say, went for 2 days. No, it went from 11 o'clock at night on the 24th and ended about 6 o'clock in the morning on the 25th. I think some people, when they read his Medal of Honor citation, it says from the 24th to 25th, they incorporate 2 days of fighting. And plus, also at the bottom of his Medal of Honor citation, it says responsible for the annihilation of a Japanese regiment. Some people interpret that as Basilone himself took out a regiment, which isn't true. If you read all the bravery medals that was given out by them, they all say that. You got to remember there was hundreds of U.S. Army Marines fighting on both sides. It was, and Basilone even says that. It's not a one-man show. But him and his guns are very instrumental in stopping for that night that Japanese penetration, which became the main reason he earned a medal, because of his valiant actions. And here we are. This is now, I talk about Billy Joe Crupton and Evans. Like I say, look, in the Marines, but yeah, they're in there. So you got John Basilone. He's on the left. He's showing his medal. You've got another guy holding his hand down. That's Billy Joe Crupton. That's a Navy Cross. And the guy squatting down, and he's got something in his hand. That's Evans. He's got a Silver Star. So this is in Australia when the division went back to Australia. So they're showing their things. I've got something special that I made this trip, and I'm glad that people actually will let me do this. And I'm very, very honored to present something. If I could have Nicole. So what I like to present, it's a white box now. I'm not presenting a white box, but what I want to present is, and I'll show the viewers, they're probably saying, what is in that white box? I'm very, very super honored to present this to the museum and to the members and you for yourself. These are 4 relics that are associated with the Basilone Medal of Honor actions. And I'll explain each one, but they were taken within 34 to 40 feet of the Basilone holes, and they're remnants of the actions that Basilone, his men, and the soldiers in the U.S. Army associated with that action with the Medal of Honor. So I'd really like to present these to the museum. I'm very, very honored to.
Thank you, Dave. We're really very honored as well. And while we take a few seconds to let you get your gloves on so that we can make you a museum nerd, I will highlight a little bit of where we're located right now. So as Dave mentioned, I'm Nicole. I'm the Director of Collections and Exhibits here at the museum, and we are located in the collection storage currently. We figured this would be the best place to do an artifact donation, a transfer from you to us, and we're really excited. So we know these materials are associated with Basilone, but I mean, it's just really incredible to have more material to highlight those individual stories, right, of him, the men around him, all of those Marines. So this is exactly what we do here with our 55,000 item collection. So these 4 items will join those, and we're really excited to preserve them and interpret them for as long as possible. So thank you.
And once again, I was very excited to donate them and let the people really experience them. And it's not going to be doing any good in my drawer. I like to people. It's history, and I like to share the history. So I know probably the viewers go, just be quiet and show me what's in the box. Okay.
It's time.
It's time. All right. Let's see. Hopefully the viewers can see. So this is a fragment of a U.S. Mark II fragmentation grenade. So this has been exploded. It's not a real grenade. Who said it's not a real grenade? But they were nice and even. They had them in segments. I forgot how many segments on each pineapple grenade. You could probably tell me. But yeah, so this was, like I said, found in front of the Basilone positions. So obviously, now in this position, when I say that, there was only fighting in there for 2 nights. The aerials never used for training after that. So anything exploded is from the actual, the battle itself. I don't know, you can barely see it, but there's remnants of yellow paint on here. Now the yellow paint denoted high explosive. All right, we're not training, it's high explosive. Even today, yellow in the markings denotes high explosives. So in 1942, the Americans carried fragmentation grenades, and yeah, they had a yellow on them. So I think in 43, due to some of the feedback, I guess you could say, from the field, they said, well, these yellow grenades, if you threw them at night, the Japanese tended to find them and throw them back. So after that became olive drab. So if you ever see a yellow grenade, I mean, I'm not telling you something you don't know, that isn't training, that's a fragmentation grenade. So next time someone sees it in a movie, they go, oh, it's a yellow grenade. They didn't have yellow grenades. They did have yellow grenades. So that's a very good relic. The next one. This is, you probably can't see it that well, but this is a 45 fired American 45 caliber bullet. ACP, they call them 45 caliber. It could have been fired from a 1911 45 pistol. I'd like to say, John Basilone's, but we will never know. Or at the time, which a lot of the Marines had, were the Thompson 45 submachine guns. And both were used that night. And you can tell this one's been fired because there's some damage in the front. But yeah, that's a US 45 caliber. And once again, this was found about 30 feet in front of the Basilone fighting positions. The next one is a typical webbing buckle. So this is US, United States. So this came from either, there's probably somebody out there probably say, I know exactly what that is, and probably tell me what month it was made. Please put in the comments. Yeah, so this is a typical buckle, come from a pack or American webbing. It was, in fact, this was located nearer the hole, which makes sense because no one's actually in front of the hose. And the last piece I have is a piece of a shrapnel. Generally, I think from a 60 millimeter, US 60 millimeter mortar. Once again, I think Nicole and her experts could tell me right off the bat, but it has lines on it, which represents when it went into the fuse. And this was located very close to the front of the bunkers too. And at the time, the 60 millimeter mortars were hitting directly in front. When the Japanese were coming in, the 60 millimeter mortars were hitting directly in front. In fact, Basilone said the Japanese were throwing sticks of dynamite, which they did. The engineers were trying to blast the wire, but he said they were throwing sticks of dynamite over his bunker toward the 60 millimeter mortars. So I thought that's a good throw. But yeah, they were impacting that area. So they're four small items, but to me they're very, and to the museum, I imagine they're very, very important. So once again, I'm very, very happy and honored to present them and for the viewers and hopefully the members of the public can see them one day.
Absolutely.
And associated with a very famous Marine and World War II specific Medal of Honor action.
That's so true. Well, I know we're going to open it up for question and answer, but I would love to ask you a bit more of your background and how you got to this point of retrieving these and bringing them here.
Yeah. Okay. We got another hour.
I know.
No. Yeah. So I guess the viewers can hear my hybrid accent. Originally, I'm from Alabama in the States. I was in the Marine Corps for 8 years. And then part of that Marine Corps service was in Australia. So yeah, I'm getting there. So I'm married Australian. My wife Australian, moved back to Australia. During that time, I joined Australian Federal Police. And Australian Federal Police had an ongoing peacekeeping mission in the Solomon Islands, specifically Guadalcanal. And me being a former Marine, 8 years, military history nut, the first chance I got just to put my name down to volunteer for the mission, I did. So I spent from 2009 to 2020, a cumulative 3 years there. So the first, I think, a couple of tours or 4 months here, and I'd go back for a few operational deployments. But in 2018 to 2020, I was an advisor to the Royal Solomon Island Police for 2 straight years. So I was in research heaven. So I walked the battlefields and I walked the areas. I read everything I could. I wanted to find out as much as I could. I went off the beaten track. I studied the ground, and I wanted, one of my goals was to locate every land Medal of Honor action. It's a bit hard in the sea. You can just put over there. But and one of them, it was always kind of lost to modern history, was the Basilone. And I had a good friend, John Ennis, who was an Australian expat, lived over there, and he had nominated a couple of holes. He says, I think they're Basilone holes, but I don't know for sure. And I said, I'd really love to lock it down. And that's what I did. I spent 5 years. And it wasn't just like walking around. I did a lot of research. I mean, especially because over 30 years as a police investigator, I used some of that skills. And I said, well, I'm going to find out. And I had a lot of good resources that I actually was able to tap into about Basilone. So I've locked it down to 3 holes, 3 bunker holes, all within 50 yards of each other. It's one of these 3, and he was in 2. So I'm pretty confident. I'd say 99% that was the Basilone hose.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think I've listened to you before talking about historians and researchers in Guadalcanal specifically, because it's such a unique landscape that you can definitely tell when somebody has spent a lot of time there or not. So it is a dense area, specifically the Basilone area. It was very dense, flat jungle, a lot going on there.
It's been cleared out over the past because of having vegetable gardens there, but yeah, it's very thick and not too many people had actually went into it. And I guarantee you, yes, it's very thick jungle, swamp, a lot of mosquitoes, and a lot of people don't go in there. But yeah, I've spent a lot of trampling around in there. It's 3 straight years of walking the ground.
That's a lot.
Studying, yeah.
Well, I think we're ready to open it up for Q&A.
Yes, we already have some questions coming in. I would like to read that initial message from the family member for everybody to hear. So this is from George, and he says, my uncle, P01 Thomas J. Nichols, and his brother, Sergeant Rufus Parks Nichols, both also served Guadalcanal. They fought apart from each other at Bougainville, Tarawa, and American Samoa. We would like to recognize Sergeant John Basilone's great service and the Medal of Honor. Respectfully, George Nichols.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, thank you, George. First question we have. After Basilone went to that second position, other than going to get ammo, was that where he spent the rest of the battle? And did you find these artifacts yourself?
Yeah, so the first part of that question, just like I said earlier, he at around 9 o'clock that morning on the 25th, the Army came in and fully relieved the Marines, that battalion. So they've moved to the right about 300 yards up on Edson's Ridge to basically consolidate the line. So that's where the rest of the battle was fought. Battle of Coffin Corner, Battle of Henderson Field was fought on the 24th, 25th, 26th, and 27th. So only after the first night, the Marines of 1-7 handled the first night, and then the rest of the 2 nights with the U.S. Army. So Basilone in 1-7 moved up on Edson's Ridge, and other than taking some mortar rounds, they weren't involved in that. Now, 1-7 was heavily involved in the Guadalcanal campaign, but for that Pacific Battle of Henderson Field, no. The second part of your questions, yes, I located these myself. There's been some archaeological digs in there. I'm not an archaeologist, but some of these are actually laying on top of the ground because it was so dense in there that it doesn't take much. And you tend to work very quickly in there when you've got literally swarms of mosquito clouds around your head and you just get in and out. But yeah.
Okay, our next one is from D. He says he thinks there are 40 knobs on a U.S. fragmentation grenade from World War II. We'll have to fact check that maybe.
We count them. Bring one out. You got one?
I do.
I prepared early. Here you go.
I do.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Okay. And then the next question we have, the famous photo of Basilone's pack. Any idea where it is today?
I know the one you're talking about. That's from the Iwo Jima, I'm pretty sure, because there's a famous newsreel. Because for the viewers that don't know and the members, that John Basilone was killed on February 19th, 1945, day one of Iwo Jima. He was killed in the 27th Marines. That was one of the reasons he's such a legend. Now he went back. He didn't have to go back. But anyway, there's a famous newsreel, and it shows some Marines, and one of them's flip it over, and it has a pack, and it says, I think, it definitely says Basilone. I don't know if it says J. Basilone. It says Basilone on it. No, it's a good question. I don't know if it's in someone's private collection or if it's at the Marine Corps Museum. I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, that'd be a very valuable piece of an item. So,
can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah, so it's not about John Basilone. I mean, there's another book in there, but no, my book is about the battles of the Matanacal River. So it's called Guadalcanal's Longest Fight, the Pivotal Battles of Matanacal. So basically, the Matanacal River area was the longest and most heavily fought over in the 6-month Guadalcanal campaign in the land. And it's such a pivotal point because it has been touched in other works. Because this, like I said before, someone asked me, they go, "Oh, I think there's 150 Guadalcanal books. What can you say that other people hasn't said?" But during the course of all my research, I kept reading and Japanese and American sources that everything kept coming back to the Matanacal, which it is. It's 5 miles to the west of Henderson Field. It's a river, and everything for the Americans, if they wanted to push the Japanese off, they had to go over the Matanacal to the west, and the Japanese if they wanted to take Henderson Field, they had to go to the east. But everything kept revolving around it. There was something like 7 major battles A third of all the ground casualties happened there. Both sides recognize its importance. In fact, Vandergrift, Major General Vandergrift, Division Commander of the 1st Marine Division, said that the Matanicow was the key to Henderson Field. But no work had really concentrated on that. And that was the basis of my book. And the people, I can't find anyone that hasn't read it, hasn't learned something new on Guadalcanal, because that was another mission I was going to do. I mean, I was reading some of these new Guadalcanal books, but they're bringing nothing new to the table. And I thought, well, if I'm going to write a book, I'm going to bring something new to the table. And I think walking the ground, well, in fact, I know walking the ground and studying the terrain, you can't beat that. Especially from my military mindset and just walking the ground and reading things, and I go, well, this is not how it occurred. And you can tell very quickly if an author's never been somewhere, especially to that extent. But yeah, I've been told it's a welcome addition to the Guadalcanal campaign, especially the land campaign. And I've got a second book that's due out in October, which is kind of the companion, and it's going to tell the U.S. Army side of the story. It also mentions some Marine battles like Holy Point and a few other battles that doesn't really get mentioned. But I thought it's high time for an Army. But I'm hoping between those two, you have the most accurate and most detailed account of the Guadalcanal land campaign. So I'm a land guy. I'm not an air and a naval, because it's 3-dimensional campaign. So, yeah.
Okay, we've got another question that's come in. What have you learned about Basilone that surprised you?
Well, one, I learned he didn't fire the weapon from the hip, or he didn't fire it off a sandbag or a log like you see in some of the other editions. And also, too, what surprised me was, and I wrote an article in Leatherneck magazine a couple of years ago, and I say, we got Manila John, the legend, versus Sergeant John Basilone, the Marine NCO. And I tend to like John Basilone. I know he would too, the Marine NCO. And yeah, what the legend I've been told about from day one in boot camp wasn't the legend. He was just a Marine NCO doing what he had to do. And he stepped up, and and all the Marines would know that. And that's what I learned more about him. He was more of a Marine NCO, just doing what he had to do to get the job done.
Yeah. Friendly fire or enemy? Can you describe the circumstances of his death?
Yeah, so once again, I'm not on Iwo Jima. I understood it was because I have his service record book and I read his casualty card. It was definitely shrapnel wounds. You read some accounts, it's from machine gun or mortar. Probably it was a mortar that killed him, and it was a Japanese mortar, as far as I know. And that's, the casualty cards, it says it's a Japanese mortar shell. I mean, he was running at the time, and Japanese mortar shells were landing because the whole area was just situated under fire with Japanese artillery and mortar. And he was hit. He suffered multiple injuries.
Okay, I've got a comment from one of our longtime viewers, Mr. Darrell. He says, "Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I completed your first book, Guadalcanal's Longest Fight,
Thanks.
Last fall, and I anxiously await your new book, Guadalcanal's Forgotten Fight, due out on the 1st of October 2026. Looks like he already has it pre-ordered."
Good man.
Way to go, Darrell.
Thank you, and you'll enjoy it.
And then D has a question. He says, does your book cover more of the 164th of the American Division on Guadalcanal? Oh, yay. You must mention your next book with those details.
Well, the 164th gets 3 whole chapters in itself. In fact, the Battle of Holy Point, I go into a lot of detail on the 164th. My first book, as you would know, the 164th suffered heavily on the Matanicow area. So, yeah, it definitely covers it.
All right, excellent. Okay, also we have another longtime viewer, Merlin. I'm going to read his comment real quick for you. Thanks for emphasizing land campaign and land casualties. More sailors were killed at sea than Marines on the island.
Yep.
And we have,
Good
one
point.
last question. Let's sneak one last one in. Those boys saw the worst battle conditions and were given no rest between being moved island to island. How do you think their experience differs from subsequent battles and wars in recent times? Maybe Vietnam is a close match?
That is a fairly difficult question. I mean, it depends on which units you're talking about, what time frame. Vietnam was 10 years, and even in the wars in the Gulf. I mean, some units rotated there numerous times in constant combat. I think it would probably answer your question. It would depend on the unit and the individuals and where they served and what they saw. Some saw more, some saw less, and that's in all the wars. I mean, you could probably go back to Revolutionary War and say which units served the most and suffered the most casualties. So yeah, I wouldn't say that any battle conditions is bad, no matter where you're at.
All right, I'm going to end with one last comment from Dee because I think it's cool. His uncle Frank was with the 164th, and he thanks you for covering that.
Oh yes. Well, once again, they deserve to be covered there and the other Army units, especially on Guadalcanal, because they didn't do mop up. You'll see my book. In fact, my first book, hopefully, I knocked that myth on its head and debunked the myth of the mopping up the U.S. Army. And my second will hopefully nail that myth, put the nail in the coffin on that myth.
All right, at this time, we're going to go ahead and close out the webinar. Thank you, Dave, for your presentation on John Basilone and for presenting the museum with these artifacts. I know Nicole and her crew are very excited to add them to our collection. Thank you for being with us today, and we'll see you next time.